Mexico just had their Independence Day, and as you can clearly see, Claudia Sheinbaum, the president of Mexico, is very popular among the people, more so than Canada's Carney or the US's Donald Trump. She has the love of the people, the love of the nation, and Viva Mexico will go on another 5 years with her term. So Mexico's opportunities for growth and prosperity will shine under her leadership. Now, we can't say the same for Canada's Mark Carney or the US's Donald Trump. At best, they may have 50-50 support from their people. At worst, maybe a little less. The purpose of this video is to discuss Mexico and Canada's trade relationship. They recently had a meeting in Mexico City with the two leaders discussing the relationship that Canada and Mexico are looking forward to in the future. This includes security arrangements, increase in trade, and they're addressing issues that they have with the U.S. administration, the tariffs, as well as what Donald Trump has recently said about Canada and Mexico. What he recently said has probably put a wedge between the US and these two countries, and that wedge is not going away. In fact, we're going to cover the comments that he's made that has really gotten Mexico and Canada upset and uniting them together to build a much stronger relationship than they will have with the US. Welcome to Financial Liberties, a channel dedicated to providing you the best information around Mexico's economy, the finance, and where the future of Mexico is going. Now, if you do enjoy this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe. We need your support and continue to watch the videos we put out. Are Mexico and Canada turning against the US? This might sound shocking, but when you look at the recent comments, new data, and up-and-coming trade talks, the picture is clear. America's closest neighbors may no longer be playing by Washington's rules. What's driving this shift, and what does it mean for the future of North America? Let's break it down. Let's start with this. Donald Trump says that Mexico and Canada do what he tells them to. Sounds bold, right?
Now they know it meant a lot. And Mexico does what we tell them to do, and Canada does what we tell them to do, because we have the two borders. We have the northern border, southern border, and they were both horrible. But now it's some people say it's a miracle.
Who is these some people that think this is a miracle? The only person that thinks it's a miracle is you, Donald. And no one else believes it, and no one's buying into it. In fact, it's his policies that have been dividing a wedge between the US and Canada and Mexico, driving Canada and Mexico into closer ties and relationships. Now, he may have actually secured the border, and he's deporting a lot of Mexican nationals, but is he actually gaining any favor from the Mexican people or the Canadian people for that matter? No. In fact, a recent poll by Pew is actually showing that Mexico and Canada now think the US is the biggest threat they have to their nations. And it's not just Mexico and Canada. Other nations are saying the same thing. So once what was a loved country by most around the world has now turned into a country which has become one of the biggest threats in the world. So let's break down the numbers. 68% of Mexican nationals think that the US is now the biggest threat to them. In Canada, that percentage is 59%. Now, I don't know what the numbers were before, but it's grown significantly. Even Indonesia, South Africa, Brazil, and Argentina are also saying that US is now the biggest threat. In fact, there's many other countries that are joining on. Spain, Kenya, Netherlands. A lot of European countries are saying the same thing. And why? Primarily, it's the tariffs. No one is appreciating all these tariff talks that he's been doing on. It's creating instability around the world, and it's hampering economic development. And some countries are just moving beyond it. Canada and Mexico are building stronger ties more than ever. Now, they've had great relationships for the last 30 years, but they are looking forward to 30 more years of economic strength and ties linking the two countries together, regardless of what the US does. Now, hopefully these tariff talks go away or they diminish. There is the USMCA trade negotiations that are going to happen next year, but that's yet to be determined, and we still have a long time from now until then. And Mexico and Canada are not stopping in terms of strengthening their ties. At the end of this video, you're actually going to see the whole video clip of Mark Carney and Claudia Sheinbaum in Mexico City talking about the trade relationships between the two countries, building strong alliances, and there's not really much talk about the US and their involvement besides that they will keep the US involved and that the US is a strong trading partner. Now, I've seen other articles talking about the stronger ties that Mexico and Canada are building, so they're no longer relying on the US. That's the point of this video. As they deem the US being the biggest threat to their nations, they're just building alliances with other countries and themselves. And I think that trend will continue. Mexico has a lot of fundamentals going forward, and it's starting to build relationships and ties with other countries around the world. Now being a big manufacturing hub in the Western sphere, that is not going to change for Mexico. In fact, Mexico has some of the best fundamentals. I've done an interview with a gentleman, and him and I actually discussed the fundamentals of Mexico, the need for financing and capital, the expansion that's going on, and that video will be posted in a couple days, so stay tuned for that. And so in summary, from that Pew Research report, we can clearly see that Mexico and Canada now think the US is the biggest threat to their nations. And this is not just public opinion. Listen to what the leaders themselves are saying. Here's Mark Carney from Canada and Claudia Sheinbaum from Mexico talking about the strengths and ties and relationships between the two countries, their trade relationship with the US, and what's next for the USMCA. That's going to be at the end of this video. What's striking is you'll find out how often they talk about working together. Mexico and Canada as partners, building resilience against the U.S. tariffs, and unpredictable policy swings. This isn't blind obedience. This is a strategy. And Mexico and Canada's ties are going to continue to strengthen regardless of what happens with the U.S. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Stay tuned for our next video coming up where we discuss the fundamentals for Mexico as well as why we think the Mexican economy is going to boom over the next 20 years. And continue to watch our channel as we share more information about Mexico's economy, the financial system, the investment opportunities, and much, much more. So let's get right into it. You can listen to what Mark Carney has to say and Claudia Sheinbaum. Now, she does say it in Spanish, so if you don't speak Spanish, well, either you're going to have to learn like I'm doing or get someone to translate. Either way, Mark Carney gets into it himself, and you can understand what he's saying there. But the sentiment is the same between her and Mark Carney. I hope you enjoyed the video. Take care, and we'll talk to you soon.
Now, from the time we first met, we've spoken of the many opportunities to work together, how to elevate an already strong relationship. After all, Canada and Mexico have had diplomatic ties for over 80 years. We have had free trade between our economies for over 30. And that partnership has improved the livelihoods of our workers and their families and helped make North America the economic envy of the world. Not just our economies, but North America, the economic envy of the world. And we are both committed to our shared partnership with the United States. And we look forward to using the upcoming review of TMEC, USMCA, CUSMA, different acronyms for the same thing, to find ways to make it fairer and more effective. Bilaterally, Canada and Mexico complement each other's strengths, and we stand united in times of challenge and crisis. We're acting to protect our communities against the scourge of fentanyl, and we help each other when disaster strikes. And I want to take this opportunity on behalf of all Canadians to personally thank you, Madam President, and the Mexican people for the support that Mexican firefighters gave to Canada this summer on our prairie provinces, Saskatchewan and Manitoba, saving Canadian lives, protecting their communities. Over those 3 decades, we've reinforced our trading relationship. We've enabled our businesses to build more together, created new jobs for our citizens, and created the resources for social cohesion and sustainability. At this hinge moment, Canada is deepening our relationships with our long-standing partners that share our values and aspire to a better, fairer, and more sustainable world. Mexico is central to those missions. And our agreement today will expand and deepen that partnership so that the next 30 years hold even greater promise than the last 30 years have delivered. Today, we're beginning a new era of elevated cooperation with a comprehensive strategic partnership. We will scale up our engagement in foreign affairs, in trade and investment, in agriculture, natural resources, in energy, finance, health, the environment, and public safety and security. We've anchored this partnership in an action plan with 4 pillars: prosperity, security, inclusivity, and sustainability. It's our blueprint to build together. So for prosperity, we'll prioritize the development of strategic infrastructure, including ports, rail, trade, and energy corridors. We'll unlock new opportunities for trade and investment, from energy to agriculture to aerospace. We'll collaborate bilaterally and with the United States to reinforce the strong foundations of our economic integration and our regulatory cooperation, with a view to making North America remaining the most competitive region in the world. And we will strengthen the integration of our agri-food value chains and increase bilateral trade in safe and secure agricultural products. We'll also strengthen our model of controlled and predictable labor migration to meet the unique needs in agriculture, seafood, and processing sectors. As part of our new action plan, we will create a new bilateral security dialogue to combat transnational organized crime, human smuggling, and cybercrime. To promote inclusivity and well-being, we'll work together to foster economies grounded in fair, safe, and equitable work environments. And we'll enhance cooperation in health policy, including addressing health insecurity, infectious diseases, and substance abuse. Both President Sheinbaum and I and our citizens have long recognized that addressing climate change is both a moral duty and a commercial imperative. And accordingly, Canada and Mexico will deepen our cooperation in climate and conservation, with action to protect wildlife, reduce emissions, sustainably manage our freshwater resources. We'll explore cooperation opportunities in emission reductions, investments in renewables, and the development of smart grids. Now, it's a long list, but it's a subset of what we intend to do. So our ministers and our officials will begin work straight away. For example, our Minister of Agriculture and Agri-Food will visit Mexico next month to discuss those opportunities in agricultural trade. Minister LeBlanc will lead a trade mission to Mexico shortly thereafter to build on immediate opportunities in trade and investment. The economic boost from the World Cup will go far beyond the field. In Canada alone, it will add $2 billion to our economy. We'll build infrastructure that will last long after the last whistle. We are both undertaking massive transformations of our economy. Plan Mexico, Canada strong. Our efforts will be strengthened by working together. As President Sheinbaum said at the G7 summit, and I quote, "In an interdependent world, no country can isolate itself. Among individuals as amongst nations, respect for the rights of others is peace." And it's by balancing this respect for sovereignty and the belief in cooperation that Canada and Mexico will build together for the benefit of our peoples.
Muchas gracias. Quiero agradecer la presencia del primer ministro de Canadá, Mark Carney, en nuestro país, así como de la comitiva que lo acompaña. Igualmente extiendo un reconocimiento muy especial a su esposa, Diana, cuya presencia hoy en México es para nosotros motivo de gran alegría y símbolo del aprecio que une a nuestras naciones. Ha sido un honor recibirles en Palacio Nacional y sostener una reunión de trabajo que refleja el espíritu de amistad, respeto y cooperación que caracteriza la relación entre México y Canadá. Hoy avanzamos de manera muy importante. Tuvimos una primera reunión, el ministro Carney y su servidora, después una reunión con nuestros equipos y finalmente una reunión con empresarios canadienses y empresarias mexicanas. Acordamos un plan de acción muy importante, que esperemos dé resultados muy pronto en términos de nuestra relación bilateral, pero también de la relación que tenemos como países de América del Norte con el Tratado Comercial. Este plan de acción va a permitir coordinar de manera más amplia y estructurada nuestros esfuerzos en distintos ámbitos de la relación bilateral. Este plan de acción abre una nueva etapa en la que fortalecemos aún más los vínculos económicos, sociales y culturales que nos unen. En la reunión que sostuvimos y el acuerdo al que hemos llegado, acordamos una serie de visiones y trabajos conjuntos. Primero, evidentemente, acordamos el fortalecimiento del Tratado Comercial México, Estados Unidos, Canadá, que ha traído a los 3 países de América del Norte mucha prosperidad. Este tratado no solo ha incrementado el comercio y las oportunidades de inversión, sino que ha generado empleos mejor remunerados, cadenas de suministro más sólidas y mercados más competitivos. Coincido plenamente en que somos la región más importante en términos económicos del mundo. El TEMEC es una prueba de que cuando trabajamos juntos, México, Canadá y Estados Unidos, podemos crear prosperidad, enfrentar con éxito los retos globales y posicionarnos como una de las regiones más dinámicas del mundo. Con Canadá queremos avanzar hacia una relación aún más dinámica y equilibrada, que abra nuevas oportunidades para las empresas, que impulse la innovación y genere bienestar compartido. Dialogamos también sobre el acuerdo que tenemos para los trabajadores que van a los campos de Canadá para poderlo mantener. Reafirmamos también nuestro compromiso con la cooperación educativa, cultural y científica y de innovación, en particular en áreas de innovación tecnológica, formación de jóvenes que representan el futuro de nuestras naciones. Conversamos sobre la importancia de una colaboración estrecha también en materia de seguridad, con pleno respeto a nuestras soberanías, pero con una colaboración en distintas áreas que nos permite enfrentar juntos desafíos de la región. Celebramos, esto no lo dije en la reunión, primer ministro Carney, pero lo comento aquí, celebramos el crecimiento constante del turismo canadiense hacia México. Nos alegra que cada vez más familias y visitantes de Canadá elijan a nuestro país como destino y expresamos nuestra voluntad de seguir facilitando esta dinámica que fortalece los lazos humanos, culturales y económicos entre nuestras sociedades. Estoy convencida que este plan de acción fortalece el tratado comercial de los 3 países de América del Norte y se traducirá muy pronto en beneficios directos para nuestras sociedades. Más oportunidades de inversión, más empleos de calidad, más innovación, más justicia social y más prosperidad. La relación entre nuestros países no es solamente institucional o comercial, sino también profundamente humana. Nos unen las familias migrantes, los estudiantes, las comunidades indígenas que comparten raíces y tradiciones, así como el compromiso de ambos pueblos por la paz, la equidad y la solidaridad internacional. Quiero expresar en nombre del pueblo de México nuestro agradecimiento por la voluntad del primer ministro Carney de fortalecer esta relación y de seguir construyendo un futuro común que honre nuestra amistad. Confiamos en que los acuerdos alcanzados hoy tendrán continuidad y darán frutos concretos en el corto plazo. México y Canadá seguirán caminando juntos con respeto mutuo y con la certeza de que la cooperación es el camino para superar cualquier reto de nuestro tiempo. Muchas gracias.
We start with the fact, both Madam President and myself, that North America is the economic envy of the world. It's the most competitive economic region of the world. And part of the reason for that is the cooperation between Canada and Mexico, both of us and the United States. We complement the United States, we make them stronger. We are all stronger together. The agreement we have today between our two nations complements CUSMA in English, TMAC, l'ACM in French. It complements that agreement, and I'm confident that with our review, our individual reviews and our collective discussions on USMCA, to use the American term, we will reinforce the strength of our economies, our individual economies, and the fact that we are stronger together.
Lo comenté en la reunión con los empresarios. Soy optimista, no solamente por convicción, sino porque creo que el tratado comercial Canadá, Estados Unidos, México o México, Estados Unidos, Canadá va a prevalecer. La reciente publicación por parte del área de tratados USTR en Estados Unidos de la convocatoria a la revisión del TEMEC, a las mesas de trabajo para la revisión del TEMEC, es muestra de ello. Por supuesto que hemos vivido circunstancias en estos meses relacionadas con los aranceles que ha definido el gobierno de los Estados Unidos. Pero una buena parte de nuestro comercio con Estados Unidos sigue siendo libre de aranceles. Y eso es porque es competitivo para los tres países. Coincido plenamente con el primer ministro Carney que somos la región más competitiva del mundo, que la mejor manera de competir con otras regiones del mundo es fortalecer el tratado comercial entre los tres países, y tenemos la visión de que esta debe ser nuestra opinión. Así que somos optimistas aún dentro de las circunstancias, dado el comercio que tenemos hoy entre México, Estados Unidos y Canadá, y los tres países a su vez, la integración económica que tenemos de las tres naciones, y que además es lo que nos conviene a los tres países. Entonces, en ese sentido, pues iniciará estas mesas de trabajo y somos optimistas del resultado.
Let me begin by saying that with respect to transnational crime, organized crime, cartels, gangs, the unfortunate fact is that there are gangs from one country in another country, but also vice versa. I'm going to acknowledge that there are Canadian gangs that operate in Mexico. We cooperate with the Mexican authorities. We share information. We're deepening that cooperation. Surveillance, heightened police cooperation is appropriate in order to ensure that these criminals are brought to justice, and not wavering in the efforts to bring them to justice, whether the activities are in Canada, Mexico, or the United States. Today, what we agreed is to reinforce that bilateral cooperation on security with respect to the specific issue you're asking, but please recognize what I said in terms of the activities are true in both countries, which is why the cooperation is, and all the cooperation is two-way. But I'll just take a moment to reinforce another point, which the needs for security for our countries go broader than that. They include cybersecurity, foreign interference, defense cooperation, and we have enormous opportunities to cooperate there. And this is part, and I'm going to reuse a word I used at the start, of the elevation of the relationship, the bringing up of the relationship, because there's a very clear strategy that's been developed around those issues, which will make sure that our citizens, whether in Mexico, Canada, or beneficiaries as well in the United States, that they are living in safer communities.
Por supuesto, con respeto a nuestras soberanías, siempre habrá cooperación y colaboración. Recientemente hubo una reunión con Canadá de nuestro gabinete de seguridad. Cooperamos con el Comando Norte de los Estados Unidos en distintos temas, tanto Canadá como nosotros, y evidentemente pues buscamos la mejor forma de cooperar y coordinarnos para garantizar la seguridad en nuestros países. Particularmente Canadá tiene mucha experiencia en ciberseguridad, por ejemplo. Nos interesa mucho conocer cómo trabajan este tema y que pueda haber cooperación y colaboración en términos de las mejores prácticas que ellos tienen para que nosotros podamos incorporarlas. Ellos recientemente también fortalecieron su frontera a través de distintos mecanismos, nos interesa saber cómo lo hicieron. Entonces, evidentemente, en el marco de nuestras soberanías, la cooperación y la colaboración es parte de este plan de acción que hemos acordado. Pues tenemos visas de trabajo que hoy vienen de Canadá hacia México, son muy útiles para la economía canadiense y acordamos que se mantienen, obviamente, en el marco del respeto de la política de Canadá. Y nuestros ministerios de trabajo pues van a seguir colaborando en este plan de acción que definimos.
Por lo pronto no sería ampliarlas.
Por lo pronto es como se mantienen y ya las mesas de trabajo para ver si es factible ampliarlas o no. Vamos a esperar la revisión que viene y ya después planearemos una reunión que seguramente se dará.
Yeah, that's right. We individually, collectively, have very open lines of communication with the third member of that group in here, and we'll work through the process of the review. I'm confident that we will be united in the Meadowlands in 9 months' time as Canada plays Mexico for the World Cup final. All three leaders will be there for that great event.
Good evening, Steve Chase with the Globe and Mail newspaper. I wanted to first follow up on the question you were asked earlier, which we didn't hear an answer from my CBC colleague. I'll rephrase it. Donald Trump is going to try to divide Canada and Mexico, and will Canada and Mexico both commit to not throwing each other under the bus?
Okay.
They're here.
I mean, it's a remarkable question. Of course, we are going to cooperate directly as we always have. USMCA is strength together. It's strength of the three countries together. That's what makes North America that contributes to North America be the economic envy of the world. And Canada is absolutely committed to work with both our partners. If there's opportunities to improve the agreement, we will pursue those. We can think of some. Our Mexican colleagues can. I'm sure the Americans will as well. That'll be informed by our review process. But we'll move forward together, without question. Is that unequivocal enough for you? Because if you want it to be unequivocal, just write down unequivocal. Okay, Steve? Thank you.
Estamos convencidos que el tratado comercial de los tres países es lo mejor para los tres países. Esa es la mejor respuesta que podemos dar.
Yeah.
And if I may just follow up with the question I intended to ask. Twice this week, the U.S. ambassador to Canada has been telling Canadians about his great disappointment. He has said, Pete Hoekstra has said twice that the United States had hoped for a bigger deal with Canada than just the CUSMA, than just the USMCA. He said they had hoped for a deal that encompassed critical minerals, steel, energy, nuclear, but it wasn't possible. So he said this to two audiences this week. What's your side of the story?
Until this point, that bigger deal that's in the interest not just of the United States, but in the interest of the Canadian people is not on the table. But it's still possible. What is the fact is that Canada and Mexico have the best actual trading relationship, trading agreements with the United States. First point. Second point is that a process is just beginning with reviews in each of our country, consultations in each of our country, of how that relationship can be improved. And while those consultations are going on, of course, we're having bilateral discussions with the United States, so you may see improvements along the way. We have the ambition, but a deal is a deal, and a deal has to go for both sides. And Canada will agree a deal that's in the best interest of Canadians. Should not surprise anyone, including the U.S. ambassador, who's doing a very good job, I would add. Thank you. For America.
Una publicación del gobierno de Estados Unidos, que hoy es lo que está ocurriendo, que en el caso de los automóviles hay un arancel establecido para todo el mundo, con excepción de los acuerdos al que está llegando Estados Unidos, disminuyendo la parte que está fabricada en los Estados Unidos. Aún en estas condiciones, México está exportando vehículos y Canadá está exportando vehículos, incluso en estas condiciones. Eso habla de la competitividad de las industrias automotrices para los tres países. ¿Ha caído un poco la exportación? Sí, pero sigue la exportación de manera muy importante. Y por supuesto que vamos a buscar defender esa competitividad que tienen las empresas automotrices para los tres países. Y vamos a compartir información en el proceso, sea que tengamos estas reuniones bilaterales o si hay reuniones trilaterales, pues evidentemente estaremos compartiendo información entre nosotros de cómo vamos avanzando. En el caso del acero, pues tenemos 50% de arancel y evidentemente estamos buscando un mejor acuerdo. La situación es distinta, nosotros somos deficitarios, es decir, Estados Unidos exporta más acero del que nosotros exportamos hacia Estados Unidos, pero estamos buscando evidentemente una mejor condición. En cualquiera de las circunstancias, como lo mencioné, estoy segura que el tratado va a permanecer y sobre todo muy importante que hay diálogo con el gobierno de los Estados Unidos de manera permanente.
Well, I don't have much to add, associate myself with the President's response. I'll just add one final point on integration and the degree of integration and the strength that comes from that. And I hope he won't mind one of the CEOs in the meetings we had with business is the CEO of Martinrea, which is an auto parts company that has thousands of employees in Canada, thousands in the United States, and 9,000, I believe, in Mexico. And I've been to some of their factories in Canada. And I know that the parts from the factories then go to Mexico and vice versa, depending on the part, and then ultimately are part of final assembly for U.S. vehicles that make those vehicles better, that make them more cost-effective, that make them more effective. That's the reality of the auto industry that has been built. And that's the reality of an auto industry that we're working not just to preserve, but to reinforce and make better. And we welcome, my final word is also to reinforce the optimism, to use your word, Madam President. There's tremendous value in this trading relationship. And the fact that the United States, as we both expected, has started the review, the consultation process of it, that's a good thing. Because the story of Martinrea, the story of other auto parts companies, of steel companies, of services companies that are building our economies, they come out in a more comprehensive way through consultations. And so ultimate decisions and agreements around tariffs and rules of origin standards and third country tariffs, they'll be very well informed by this process and taken in a calm, deliberate manner. Thank you. We take a bit of a different view of the relationship, the economic relationship between the countries. We take a view of how can we help our citizens? How can we adjust regulation? How can we make sure tax regimes or tariff regimes or trading regimes, sharing of information, talent, how can we do all that? And then we trust in the outcome. So, for example, over the 30 years of trade, free trade, Canada's trade with Mexico has gone up 10 times. I don't know exactly how much more it'll go up with the measures we will take or the investment, which is measured in the tens and tens of billions of dollars. We're not requiring amounts of investment. We're creating the conditions for significant investment. But what I do know is this, that the scale and depth of what we're agreeing to and what we intend to implement, and I'll speak for Mexico, also for Canada, the scale of the domestic ambition, Plan Mexico, Canada Strong, is such that we would expect much greater amounts of trade, much greater amounts of investment to build over the coming 30 years than we've seen over the last 30 years. Because our economies are that much closer, our values are aligned, and our ambitions are greater. Thank you.
No tengo mucho más que agregar. En el marco del tratado comercial que tenemos México, Estados Unidos y Canadá, o Canadá, Estados Unidos y México, evidentemente se fortalecen nuestras economías y buscamos mayor inversión y mayor comercio. De todas maneras, lo que acordamos es que en términos de nuestra relación bilateral aumenten las inversiones y también el comercio en distintas áreas. En cuánto puede llegar a aumentar, pues es parte de lo que vamos a trabajar en estos meses. Y lo que es muy importante, y además agradezco enormemente al ministro Carney, porque hablamos muy abiertamente, sí fue una reunión protocolaria, pero sobre todo fue una reunión de trabajo. Y eso fortalece la relación México-Canadá, el desarrollo económico de nuestros países para el bienestar de nuestros pueblos.